course. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm about ready on this side. I've been listening to both of you talk.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
Good.
Cool.
Let me just check the camera one more time.
Okay.
Being picky.
Okay.
Let me just decide. Okay, I'm loving it. We're good.
It's good.
You like how the camera looks?
I like it. Yeah.
All right. You guys are ready to go whenever you're ready, right?
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
And no espresso, like, guys, take your time.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Okay. Hey, what's up, y'all? You are listening to your Mental Matters podcast. I'm your girl, Mo. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. We are back with another episode and a very special guest. We have Avi in the building.
What's going on?
Hi, Avi.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing? Thank
I'm
you so
good.
much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to be on the other side
Yeah.
of the recording. I do really enjoy interviewing, but then the other side of the interview is it's a great place to be because I'm always thinking, I'm always wanting to learn, and I'm always in a position where I think about certain things or people tell me certain things about their experiences, and it's always good to be on the side where you're kind of being asked the questions in a way,
Yeah.
or having the conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's just extra reps, just in terms of my own podcast and creating genuine and meaningful connections. So I
Yes.
appreciate you having me on.
No, absolutely, of course. And I know you just like touched on it briefly that like you have your own podcast, the 1% podcast, which I love. I love like your content. Like to me, I was like, even like just the setup, like the professionalism, how like, just authentic the conversation is too. That was a part of the reason why I thought it would be perfect to have you on because that's essentially what this podcast is about too. Like, but I did want to get into, well, for one, I want you to introduce yourself to the people, right? Like
Okay.
who is Avi, right? Podcaster, yes. But outside of that, like who are you? What do you do?
Okay.
What should people know about you?
So right now I'm finishing up my last year of school. I'm a senior at Brooklyn College.
Nice.
And I think that for people to understand me, I think what they see on the internet is they see a very serious person. And I think for the most part, I will say that I do need to take life a little bit less serious,
Right.
if that makes sense. Because I'm always, I am so focused on the goal setting and moving the pin forward, and I'm never fully here in the present.
Yeah.
And I'm just a deep thinker, and I really enjoy understanding what this whole life thing is about.
Yeah.
Why are we even here? What can I do to make this a better place?
Yeah.
Some people have called me a philosopher. I don't think I'm there yet. I mean, I'm only 25 years old. There's not much for me to philosophize about.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy thinking, and I think that's one thing for me that I've always tried to tear myself down on is like, why do I think so much? Can I just like turn it off?
Yeah.
And I just want to create a better world than when I found it.
Yeah.
And when I started to understand the world a little bit better and understand people a little bit better.
Yeah.
So how I would describe myself is somebody that is trying to change the world with positivity, trying to inspire, trying to motivate people through everyday life.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason behind the 1% better is not only helping other people become 1% better, but also the guests that I have on. Hopefully they can understand something a little bit better about themselves.
Right.
And maybe they become 1% better in that.
Yes.
And by asking those questions and having those conversations, maybe they have a light bulb go off like, I never know I thought of things like that, or I never felt this way before about a certain topic, or the question that you asked, the conversation that we got into, I realized something about myself.
Right.
So I just try to create a better world by doing that, by helping people on camera, off camera, and just trying to show up the best that I can in this world to create a better one.
Yes. No, I love that. And I appreciate that response. I think, like, I feel like that being the goal, even though I know you said like, you feel like you operate very like seriously, I think there's something good about that too, especially you being 25. I feel like a lot of 25-year-olds right now are like not very much so unserious, right? Like, I mean, and no knock, right? Because people, everybody's like journey and pace is different. But I think, I can relate to you in that because I feel like for a large part of my life, I was very just like headstrong about like what I wanted to do, which I think got me to where, I am now. Which of course, like, we can get more into like about me later on. But yeah, I think now I'm at a place where I can be unserious because I'm like, I have been serious for a long time. So sometimes I think it can just be like, it's good sometimes to like put your head down, do the things that like, feel right for you. And then, you have more life to just do all the things like that are fun that you want to do, So I don't see it as like a bad thing, but, sometimes the pressure, right? Like the pressure on yourself or even like anxiety, like sometimes anxiety can derive from that, do you feel like you've experienced any like mental health stuff because of it?
I think so. I think a couple of weeks ago I experienced burnout for the first time because I never know what burnout was when people would talk about it. And I think I've faced doses of burnout. But I think a couple weeks ago, I truly looked at burnout in its face. And for doing the podcast and creating content for a couple of years now and not being at the space that I wanted to be at, I was just, why? Why is it not happening right now?
Yeah.
Why is the things that I'm doing and trying to move that needle forward and how much effort and how much I really care about this process of trying to create content and create meaningful conversations and just trying to make the world a better place. And I would ask like, why is it not happening right now? And obviously, school, couple internships that I've been doing and just trying to keep the podcast, I was literally burnt out. So I had to call one of my friends and just say, I'm burnt out right now. And I've never experienced it.
Yeah.
But it can be I would say that creating content and this whole content creation and podcasting itself, it can create a version of yourself that becomes isolated.
Yeah.
And when you see the product and you see the thing that you're trying to do every day, it can become a little lonesome.
Yeah.
In a way. And because only you see that.
Right.
Nobody can see the thing that you want out of this life, and nobody can see what you're trying to put into this product or into this thing that you're creating, but you. So as you probably know, along that way, you're going to have to isolate from certain people. You're going to have to say no to certain things. You're going to have to put whatever it is that you're trying to do first.
Yeah.
And say no to other people. So I would say, I mean, I faced depression. I faced loneliness. I faced all these things because I can only see this and because I want this so bad.
Yeah.
That you have to say no to certain things.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense for sure. And I'm glad you feel like you got on the other side of the burnout, or are you still going through it?
I think I face it in waves. I think I've been trying to tap into faith more. I've never really been a religious person. I was growing up, but then as I got older, I didn't identify with the religion I was practicing. So I'm in a space now where I'm just like, before this podcast, I made sure I prayed, and I prayed not only for this podcast to do well, but I prayed for you, and I prayed for anything that you may be going through, like, and I've tried to let go of the outcome of it, and noticing that everything's gonna happen within due time.
Yeah,
like the recent video I posted this week was just what I thought my life should be, and what God wants my life to be, and I think I know what's best for me.
Yeah.
But I don't, because I'm not in control of all the little things, the micro things that happen.
Yeah.
He's in control of it.
For sure.
And I've had to detach from that outcome and really trying to get to that outcome and just enjoy the process along the way.
Yeah.
And for so long, I've always said that. But truthfully, I found myself within this past week, within the past 2 weeks, just letting go of it because I'm not in control. I could just do as much as I could do.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think, one of the great points that you mentioned, it came up like a couple of times, was like letting go.
Yeah.
Right? Letting go. And it may be letting go of people. It may be letting go of certain ideologies, like, or even certain things that maybe you've always, carried, right?
Mhm.
Or held on to. So I think, during that process of like letting go, you grow so much, right? And so I think that's why it's necessary. So I love that.
Yeah, it's in a way, kind of when you let go, you allow space for other things that are supposed to be there
Yes,
to come in.
absolutely.
You take a step back, and it's just that's all I needed to do was just take a step back,
Yeah.
and everything else is just gonna play out in the way that it's playing out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to do. And as I say this now, I will probably come to a point within this maybe a couple of days, maybe a week or so,
Mm-hmm.
and be at that place again. But it's just trying to understand that and try to really drill it into your head that there's nothing I could do.
Right.
As long as I'm moving that needle forward.
Yep.
And trying to take care of what I could take care of, everything else will take care of itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Thank
Of
you
course.
for sharing. Already gems.
Yeah.
in the
I do wanted to ask you though,
Mhm.
as I'm somebody who really cares about mental health, as
Yeah.
I really I care about this space, what is something that you see on a day-to-day basis that you may struggle with in terms of trying to help other people, in terms of trying to help yourself in that process? Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious about that because I know sometimes a therapist or the people that help other people need the help too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I will never deny that, right? And if you come across anybody who's in the mental health field and they say that they don't need a therapist or they don't need help, run. I would say run away from them fast, okay? But no, I definitely think, I guess maybe I can speak to, first I'll start with like maybe the things that I see other people struggle with, and then I can get into like, because like the question is like, is it in retrospect to like me or more of,
I guess when you're helping other people, what are some of the things that they're coming to you to talk about?
okay, a lot of times it's like relationship stuff, right? Like that's like, which I feel like is like very common, right? Like, sometimes it's romantic stuff like breakup, communication issues. A lot of times it's communication issues, actually, whether it be platonic relationships or romantic. And then I think sometimes it's like trauma, like things that people have, like, and, it doesn't have to necessarily be like, even like those extremely intense forms of trauma. Sometimes it's just like a particular moment in time that like a person can't seem to like, move past because it, still keeps coming up and things like that. So yeah, a lot of times I feel like I do try to help the best way that I can with clients that I see too. And then sometimes I find that like, I've had sessions where like a client was going through something and I was triggered. And then after the session, I was like, I need a break. That was a lot. Or it made me actually make a different decision in my own life because because sometimes you can give certain advice and then realize like, oh, I haven't been doing good with that myself. So that has happened to me a few times where maybe I was suggesting that a client like speak up for themselves more or set boundaries, and then I wasn't setting certain boundaries or speaking up in those moments. So I think for me, that's kind of where I see like struggles come in for myself that also affect my client or like a friend or someone.
Yeah. What do you think? So I love relationships because regardless of what language you speak, we all want this same thing, and it's love.
Yeah.
We all want that thing. You can speak a whole other language, be a whole part of another part of the world,
Yeah.
and still want that thing of love. What do you believe makes a great relationship?
Oh, not you interviewing me off. It's crazy.
Listen, I'm curious, man. I think especially with people that are, really well versed in the field, I'm definitely curious about
yeah, that's a good question. I would say the first word that's coming to mind is alignment. So I think like whoever you're choosing to be with, I think you guys should be aligned, right? Doesn't necessarily mean you guys are into all of the same things or you like doing the same activities, because I just feel like that's not realistic. Like you may have a partner that like, they like to wake up and go for morning runs. You like to sleep in, and then you guys compromise. You meet in the middle somewhere and it works, right? But I think alignment more so when it comes to like those crucial things that like are just like, we cannot, compromise on these particular things. Like you guys get it. So like if it's spiritual like a spiritual or religious thing, if it's, sometimes politics, because I think sometimes politics can like shake the table, at least from what I see with people in general, but also with my clients. Like politics have been like a very like, major thing that have rocked the boat in like certain relationships. So if it's political beliefs, if it's like religion, if it's, just morals and values, like things that like you guys agree are like can't non-negotiables, like we're just not into those things, we're not doing that. So I think like when it comes to just those core things, alignment is important. I also think just being able to communicate very openly. I think communication can be hard sometimes because depending on how you grew up, like some people were not even like were never raised or around or in an environment where it was okay to even like speak an opinion that was different from a family member's, right? Like everybody was just like one sound, one band, one mind. Some people come from those backgrounds, and then you meet someone who's just very like boisterous and vocal, and it's like, oh no, like this is a lot. So I think like, I think just growing in communication all the time, right? Not to say the communication has to be perfect, but doing your best to communicate as openly as you can about how you're really feeling, what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, boundaries, right? Like I know like standards like are not like, today what I'm seeing like standards is like, you know, hit or miss, right? Like in relationships. And I think, having standards and expectations, boundaries, I think actually make relationships last longer than not having them. So I think, having those things, I think are a good combination. Of course, like all of the things that like, honesty, respect, kindness, like those things are like go without saying. Like I would hope, people are choosing people who like are kind, like that, like say nice things to them, that like are safe people. Like safety, I think is important, and not just like physical safety, but emotional and mental safety. Like you can talk about something that hurt you and not be like judged. Things like that, I think, are just a few, right? Like good recipes for healthy relationship.
Yeah, a couple things in there that I wanted to go in, because I think I mean I have like a little bit of an unpopular opinion about communication. I think when I look at it objectively about communication itself, I think a lot of people want to be heard and understood.
Yeah.
And I think the heard part is important.
Yes.
But I also don't believe that it is fully possible to expect somebody to understand you. And here's why. I think that we live this life on our own life experience and our own life lived.
Yeah.
So for you to tell somebody this hurt me,
Yeah.
the only thing that I believe that could be done at that time is being empathetic and compassionate towards.
Yeah.
Because I will never understand what hurts you. I will never understand, but I can only be there to kind of aid and kind of give that safe space for you to feel understood.
Yeah.
It's like if I tell you, oh, this hurt me, you won't understand what that hurt is like. Or this is what happened in my life, and this is the traumatic thing that happened. You may never understand that.
Right.
But I think that where we offer the compassion and the grace is listening to it so you don't make that same mistake. And I think at least that's in my life when I try to be understood,
Yeah.
or when somebody would explain to me that they don't feel understood. I think that there's always been a crossroads, and maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's an unpopular opinion or unpopular take, but I think the best thing in that moment is giving that person the space to be able to express what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And meet them there.
Yep.
But I also believe it's on the other person to offer that sense of I may never be understood, but as long as this person is meeting me halfway and more than halfway,
Yeah.
then I think that's where the safety and the love comes into play. I don't know. That's just been something I've been thinking about, because I understand like how is it? It's not impossible, but it's very hard for me to expect somebody to understand what I'm going through or what I've already went through, or me telling this complex emotion and having them fully understand what I'm telling them.
Yeah. I get that. I think that is interesting, right? Like I think that's an interesting take. And I feel like I've heard something similar like this
Mhm.
in the past, right? Where it's like I agree with you. I think like if you haven't lived something like literally, then like you wouldn't know what that feeling is,
Mhm.
right? But I do think where you kind of bridge that gap is empathy,
Mhm.
right? Like that's like empathy is like my favorite word. I use this all the time with my clients. I'm like empathy, 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 right? Because like, especially when it comes to like relational dynamics and things like that, everyone doesn't have empathy. Everybody doesn't operate with empathy or use empathy, right? Like as a tool. Like I say, empathy is a tool. Like it can make your life easier because it can prevent certain arguments or
Mhm.
conversations from even needing to be had because you are operating from a place of empathy often. So and I think there is a difference between empathy, compassion, sympathy, right? Like there are like fine lines between those things. And how I always describe empathy is you are basically putting yourself in that other person's shoes, right? You're thinking about whatever it is that they're telling you, and you are putting yourself thinking about yourself as if you were going through that thing, right? And then what would you want to happen? What would you want to be done, right? And another thing is like the difference between like sympathy and empathy. I always say is like sympathy is like, oh, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this thing. Empathy is I'm sorry that this is happening. How can I help? What can I do to change it to make the situation better for you, right? But I think the way how people can maybe how I try to break it down so it can be a little easier is think about what if you were in that position? What if you were going through that thing, right? And that can sometimes help make the difference. I do that often. Like whenever I'm like, I don't really get it, I'm like, okay, if I was in this position, how would I feel? Right? What would I want? How would I want someone to respond to me? Right? And that helps from like the frustration that sometimes comes up with like not understanding, like because you didn't live it out,
Mhm.
literally, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the empathy is that extra step.
Yeah.
And I think it's the extra step, and I think it's what most people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's, "I'm sorry that you went through that. How can I help?" And I see that sometimes too, and when you're explaining certain things and you're being vulnerable and transparent about something, and this is something that personally I've never felt where I've really truthfully felt listened to. It's not you don't need to understand it.
Yeah.
But when people ask me and they can see, oh, you might have, bear a lot of burdens in terms of people, because I do enjoy listening truthfully.
Yeah.
Because I understand how many people need to get that off their chest
Yeah.
and need to talk and don't have those people to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in the communication, in being transparent and vulnerable with somebody, I think that we don't offer that space enough to people where you can just say anything and I don't need you to fix the problem. I don't need you to do anything about the problem. I just want to sit here and tell you.
Yeah.
And that's something for me that I've never really truthfully experienced, where I could just, there's no judgment here.
Mm.
I'm able to tell you what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about. And I see that a lot with men, especially because we obviously bottle all of these
Yeah.
emotions and we
Yes.
don't feel that we have the space to explain what is going on.
Mm.
We have all these complex thoughts, these emotions, things we're battling within ourselves,
For sure.
and and our own expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that part of like listening to, just, we don't want nothing. We just want you to sit here and listen to us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need you to fix anything. And I think in that empathy part is, do you need help? Do you want me to just listen? And I think also too, when somebody's telling you something, it's those two things, at least that I try to practice, is, do you just need me to listen, or do you need me to offer you some advice or
Right.
offer you some perspective?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sometimes where the communication also goes a little left, is because we're trying to fix the problem and we don't understand how we can help the situation. And sometimes the best thing you could do is just listen.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's something cathartic, like, and that's why I'm always like a big advocate of therapy, because like, not just because I'm in the field, working as a therapist currently, it's more of because I've gone to therapy myself.
Mhm.
I have, and it has worked, right? And most of the sessions I was talking the entire time, or like at least 75 to 80% of the time. And then, maybe the therapist would offer some feedback and stuff like that if need be, but it helped for what I was dealing with at the time. And so I always say, like, if you ever want that space, you can find it in therapy. Because I think the client ultimately sets the tone for like how the sessions go. Like, at least for me, because I think there are different types of therapists. Like, I'm not a therapist who's like, this is what I'm saying, you do this. Like, there are some therapists who are more directive in that way. Like, I think like people who, like therapists who are like into like cognitive behavioral therapy heavy, they are more directive. Like, they'll give you some, maybe like a lot of feedback, a lot of, like, try this, do this, right? And I don't always know that that's like helpful all the time, just from my experience and just my like, therapeutic approach.
Mhm.
I think being able to just talk, there's something really like cathartic and healing about that. Like, there's something about that just brings healing. And it's also like, I don't think it's my job to heal anyone. I think it's everybody, going on that journey for themselves. And the healing sometimes happens as you're talking. Maybe you even realize like, oh wow, something clicks, right? Like,
Mhm.
in you talking about just your own life experiences, something clicks. Like, I've seen it happen time and time again. So for me, I'm always like, yeah, like that, being able to, if you're able to find that within a friend, like somebody who can just listen to you, and doesn't, like somebody who, of course, who has the time and the energy, because I think that can become a little bit, it can maybe feel like dumping,
Mm.
depending on like who like the person is. But if you're able to find that right, safe resource in a friend or in a partner, then cool, use that, right? But I always say, like, so that the people around you don't become like heavy, right? Or burdened or tired, right? Um, Therapy. I'm always like, therapy, but the right therapist,
Mm.
right? Like, sometimes that takes time to find that. Like, not any therapist now. Because like, you may go into this situation thinking it's one thing, and then you find that like, oh, like this approach is different from what I thought.
Mhm.
So I have to keep looking. But absolutely, just being able to talk and be heard, there's absolutely something healing about that for sure.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm. It's interesting, because at least when I've gone to as I've been going to therapy, I mean, I honestly, how long? I've been going to therapy for close to probably 10 years now. I think that's the one thing that I struggle with, truthfully, is I don't know, man. I just want to be challenged. And the therapist that I'm with now, I've been with her for a while,
Yeah.
but how do I? Because obviously we talked about it a little bit during the live podcast,
Yeah.
and I wanted to give you your flowers on that. I thought it was an
Oh,
incredible event. Yeah, I
thank you
wanted to
so
be able to
much.
tell you.
Thank you.
Um, how do I know? Like, I think sometimes I want to be challenged in a certain sense of I think I'm explaining certain things, but I don't know if I'm being challenged to my fullest ability. And I don't know if it's a me problem
Mm.
or I don't know if it's the therapist,
Yeah.
the therapist problem, but I really want to be challenged. And I don't know if the space that I'm currently in with my therapist is if I'm being challenged. So how do I know, really, truthfully, if I need to move on and maybe find something else?
For sure. I think that's a really great question. And someone at the live show actually asked something similar,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, they explained that they actually were kind of like, serial leaving, right? Their therapist. They were like, oh, I tried this one, didn't really like it. So they moved on to the next one, which I think is okay, right? Like, it's no knock, no judgment. But I think that um if you've been with a therapist for a good amount of time, 9 times out of 10, at least I would hope, right? There's a therapeutic relationship there where you can freely express how you're feeling, right? Do you feel like you can
I
freely
think
express?
so. I think so.
Mhm.
But I mean, truthfully, a lot of it is tied back to she knew how I grew up. She was also a therapist to my family. So I
Oh,
feel like
okay.
that's also maybe hindering in a way where that now there's like a certain perspective or a certain perception
Yeah.
that's now being casted upon
Interesting.
me by seeing me grow up literally from like 14 years old or I mean I had anger management when I was a kid, so I would always like lash out and I was always an angry kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that personally, seeing me in that light and seeing me now are two completely different people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the perception of me that's always going to be there,
Mm-hmm.
because it's even as a therapist, I can imagine it's probably hard to. This is the person I saw at this point in their life, and now they're a completely different person,
Yeah,
or maybe they've evolved in a certain way, and they still had that perception of who you were.
for sure.
You know what I mean? Where, oh yeah, I saw Avi when he was 12 years old, 13 years old, and he had anger issues,
Yeah.
and now he's 25 and he's a completely different person. Like we wouldn't even know night and day.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I navigate that where I feel like I can be able to speak freely, but I also feel like there's a tainted perception of who I am and who I am now.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And that's really interesting. I think like that's honestly maybe the first time I've heard of a scenario like that.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, so did you guys do family therapy?
Yeah, it was family therapy. My brother went, my dad went, my mom went. Obviously I went.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we all went to the same therapist.
Got it. And now you see this therapist one-on-one.
Yeah, but I've, certain things have taken place where I don't see her as much. Obviously scheduling busy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm the only person that sees her now. My mom sees her and
Yeah.
stuff, but I don't know. I struggle with that because I don't know if it's time for me to move on or is it time for me to, because I did try to move on to the therapist,
Yeah.
but like, I'm still under my dad's insurance plan. Like I get off his plan at like 26, 27. So like
Understood.
I also have to find people that are in his network, and there's not been a lot of people in New York City that are in his network.
Interesting.
So I'm paying like 100, 150 out of pocket, and like personally, that's like I can't afford that right now since I'm still in school and stuff.
Of course.
So
A lot.
I don't know. I've been kind of like in this crossroads of trying to find a new therapist.
Yeah, I'm curious like what the insurance is, but we can maybe like talk
of course,
after about
of
it.
course.
But I think based on what you shared, something in me was like maybe leaning towards maybe seeking a new therapist. But I think that could be the last resort, right? Because I think it sounds like if you've been with her for, it sounds like maybe 10 years. Like
Yeah, she's known me for some time now.
Yeah, for like and she's seen you in different seasons of your life. I think that there could be like trust there, but I think if there's any part of you that feels like you can't fully show up and express those things that are underneath the surface, or something's holding you back, or you don't feel challenged, you don't feel like certain things are happening that is needed for you to feel like you can, you'll get to the next level in your journey. Being able to express that, I think, is healthy. Like I've had clients tell me like, I don't know if this is working, or like, is this working? Like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I've been like, oh, like, tell me what you think is not working. Like because I think that's like those conversations, because a relationship with a therapist is a relationship, right? It's not like a personal one. Like it's not a romantic one or a platonic one, but it is a relationship. So in any relationship, you should be able to communicate as authentically as possible. And I always would want, and that's the thing, as the therapist has certain responsibilities as well to make sure that the client is feeling like their needs are getting met in the space, right? And I think if, but the client also has to do their part by saying, hey, like, I don't know that my needs are getting met here at this time, right? And so like, if she doesn't know that, then that's the breakdown. That's what's missing. But if you express that and still nothing changes, then it could be time to just like, slowly but surely start like seeking out other options. But for sure, like you being able to say that, like, hey, I don't know if my needs are getting met. I feel like something's missing. Like, is this working? The therapist should be able to respond to that, right? And try to help to get you guys to a place where it feels like it's working for you. Because that's come up for me a couple of times, and then I've, asked questions, right? I've probed a little bit. I've tried to figure out like, what is it that they feel like maybe I'm not doing, or what can I start doing, like, because it's a two-way street.
Right.
It's absolutely a two-way street.
That's interesting. I'll definitely have to take that into conversation.
Yeah.
I definitely have to figure that out. Yeah, therapy is such a, I don't know. I guess when people say, as I've been going to therapy for so long, I guess when people say therapy is work at the end of the day, right? Because what people are telling you, what is being explained, you have to now go and apply that. And most people, once they see something that they don't like, or they know that they need to change,
yes.
man, are we the quickest to run the other
To
way?
bow out, yeah. Absolutely.
And it's hard to look at yourself objectively and say, this is the thing I need to change, because ultimately we either do two things. We wait until the situation gets so bad that we know we need to change,
Mhm.
or two, we have no choice but to make the change because of either circumstances or a relationship that forces us to change.
Yes.
And it's not easy by any means to heal yourself or to heal certain things or certain patterns. But I mean, to me, ultimately, I think if you want to create the best version of yourself for not only yourself, but other people, how many other people would be able to view you as who you are and also be infected by that?
Right.
Right? Like if you're a husband, if you're a wife, or if you have kids, like they're watching you
Absolutely. All the time.
all the time. And even though you don't think that your 5-year-old kid probably is watching you, they're watching you.
They're watching closely.
Yeah, everything. and then you also have to ask yourself, like, is this a what I want to create another version of myself out of this kid?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not a father yet, but I can only understand, like, being a kid and seeing certain things that happen between my parents' dynamic and what I view growing up, and like, this is not what I want to create for my kids. And I'm always fascinated by fathers or mothers, and wanting to know, how has being a father or mother, how has that changed your life? And a couple of the fathers that I've had on in the podcast, they said it's been the most transformative thing, because now I know somebody else is watching me, so I cannot not do good, or I cannot not be motivated, or I cannot not be on, business.
Yeah.
In terms of what I have to do each day. So
absolutely, you can't crash out.
no, you can't. You can't crash out.
Crashing out is not an option when you have children.
No, not at all. Not at all. But I think that's a beautiful thing, though. I think healing, if you look at it as not a sense of like destination, but more or less a roadmap or a guide to get you to that best version of self, I think that is a good map to stay on and a good track to stay on. Because at the end of the day, man, we only have this one life anyway. So why would you want to infect so many other people when so many other people are getting infected already about other stuff that's going on in the world?
Absolutely. No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm definitely like super curious now, because I think it seems like family dynamics have come up a few times.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm wondering, like, maybe we can go back a little bit, right? Go back and talk about like what your upbringing was like where you're from. Because I know even at the live show, you said like you're not originally from here.
No.
Right? You're from somewhere else. And, of course, we didn't get to like expound further. So I'm definitely curious, like, where you originally from, what it was like for you growing up, and like what was your family dynamics like?
So I'm from Westchester County. As people in New York City, they call that upstate. Whether you want to debate that or not, it is totally up to you. I've definitely given up on that conversation. But Westchester County is an hour from here. More specifically, I'm from Austin, New York.
Okay.
Very, very small town. But to me, it was my first experience of, I call it like little New York City, because there were so many different religions, ethnicities, people of all walks of life.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of create this worldly perspective by living there and seeing so many people from these different walks of life. I think it opened up my mind in a sense of, it not only created curiosity, but it created an outside perspective for me to be able to put myself in their shoes, right? Even though I don't understand your life lived, I've heard what you've told me years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm able to kind of create a certain sense of empathy and compassion towards another person. And I think when you only have this one rigid view of what life looks like or what life is, I think you can be able to create this, I don't know, just this rigid mindset where you believe that your way is the right way and you don't see anything else.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the beautiful things that I, experienced in terms of growing up in this small town. And I guess my life growing up, it was different. It wasn't, by no means, I mean, listen, I'm grateful for the life that I had as a kid. I never had to worry about a meal. I never had to worry about, rent being paid. Like, I never had to worry about that. So I'm grateful in that sense.
For sure.
I would say that, since I moved to New York, I've definitely seen the other side of the spectrum where where I currently live, I see a lot of things that it's shifted a perspective because where I've grown up and where I live now are two completely different places. So
Right.
I've gained an understanding and a respect for people differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would just say, like, at least for me, I would say the thing that it impacted me was both my parents, they divorced at the age of 18. So when I was 18, they divorced.
Okay.
But things were rigid before that.
Okay.
So I think in terms of what was altered was my perception of what love looks like.
Got it.
And how what does that really look like? Does love look like arguing all the time? Does it look like, not going out to dates? Like, does it look like, what does this look like? And it was a very rigid and negative perception of love. And I would say, growing up, I didn't really have the best relationship with my father. And it wasn't until this past year that I started to amend that and started to come to a more of an accepting place
Yeah.
of where my father is at.
For sure.
And I think that I've grown more love for him, and him and I have grown closer because I just simply had a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably, for me, one of the most emotional conversations I've ever had. Was I just asked him, do you feel like you've done enough for me? Like, do you feel like you were a good father?
That's deep.
And I mean, man, a couple seconds later, he just explained so much stuff to me. Like, my parents weren't alive when you were here. Like, my mom and dad found each other later in life. Like, my mom had me at 45. So
Wow. I love that.
yeah, I mean, she calls me her miracle baby. I don't know. We'll see by the end of my life if I'll be a miracle or not. But
yeah, she was healthy then.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when women get to a certain age, like when you get in your 40s, it's high risk pregnancy, but you have to be in good health to give birth around that age. So I'm like, God bless. That's a blessing.
Yeah, I call her Superwoman all the time. So she's definitely somebody that's very deep to me. But so that conversation was just kind of like, do you feel like you've done the best for me? And he basically told me that I think I did. And then I heard him choking up on the other side of the phone. And I think it was one of the most healing conversations because if I never asked that question, I never understand his perspective.
Yeah.
And what was elaborated to me is that I didn't know how to be a father because both my parents, I couldn't call mom and pops, and I couldn't say, am I doing this thing right?
Right.
Should I lighten up in this area? How do I show love?
For sure.
And then when I heard that, I went deeper and I said, what was the relationship like with his parents? And then from knowing the conversations that he had, it wasn't very close.
Got it.
So how it's unfair for me to expect him to show up at this point in being a father if, number one, his parents weren't there.
Right.
They were there for my brother, but when I was alive, I never met any of my grandparents besides one.
Got it.
So now I'm placing judgment on him. And I was placing judgment on myself. Like, was I not a good son? Did I not ask the right questions? Did I show him love? And man, he started crying. I never cried like that ever in my life because it's so selfish of me to say you weren't a good father, but not understand what he'd been through.
Right.
I'm labeling you as a bad father. I'm labeling you as we've never had this good relationship. But then I had to look at myself and check my ego and say, but what did you ask about him? Were you curious about him?
Right.
And I think in that I became selfless and trying to be empathetic and compassionate towards his side.
For sure.
And I tell all the time now, just have that relationship with your parents if you don't have a relationship with them, because you never know what answers you might get. And that was one of the answers that I got, and it was a very healing conversation.
I love that. I think that's amazing because I think it takes courage to do that. I think the reason why a lot of times people are left with kind of like questions or like resentment or, frustration with parents for years and years is because no one takes that courageous step to kind of like break the ice or extend the olive branch or, bridge the gap that's there. So I think, kudos to you for doing that. I think that's, I think that's great. And the fact that like things are kind of like progressing in a more positive way now is a testament to that.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was told on one of my recent episodes that uncomfortable conversations lead to healthy relationships.
Oh, for sure. I know that's right.
And I think it is a very, listen, I give empathy and compassion to people that don't want to take that step.
Mm-hmm.
But I think on the other side of it, you'll realize how beautiful that answer is, the answer to the question. We're so afraid to ask the question, but we don't know how healing that answer could be.
Yes.
And that version of yourself, that 7-year, 8-year-old kid, that 12-year-old kid, whatever it is,
yeah,
that might heal everything, and that might change everything. And everybody's situation is different, but at least for me, I'd never like to have those uncomfortable conversations, but I realized after how healing they can be just by that one circumstance.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And I could even say, like, that's the thing. I've struggled with that too, like being able to, at least when it's come to like, because I actually was a guest on a podcast recently, where was a lot of conversation about like upbringing, family, my parents. And I've been very like transparent about that on this podcast too, that like, I come from a single parent household. Me and my mom are super close. Shout out to her. She was at the live show.
Let's go.
Yeah, but my dad is absent, right? And like, there's been times where I've thought about asking him certain questions, but just like feeling like he may be incapable of providing answers because of just time and like age and even just like I don't know where he's even at like mentally and like so for me I think I've always maybe not always, I would say maybe in more recent years I've contemplated at times like should I but like I always kind of just say like I don't need to but there is a desire there. So like, even if it's just a little bit, I'm like, if there's something there, why am I not doing it? And I don't know if it's a thing where maybe I'm just afraid of like the wrong, right? Response, or if it will lead to like more like turmoil and discomfort or like, and not to say like I'm even in a place, that's the thing. I feel like I'm in a fine place. So it almost feels like I'm like knocking on like a door that like I've been okay without like knowing these answers thus far. But so I think like even to what you were sharing, even though I think like the circumstances are a little bit different because he's just hasn't really been involved at all. But I think it's still really like great to hear that like, like people do take those steps.
Yeah.
Even, whether a parent, is there or not there, people still go seeking. And so for me, I think I have moments where I'm just like, maybe one day, but like, will it be sooner? Will it be later? And then also like, life is short, like parents are getting older. Like we don't know what tomorrow, will bring. So for me, I think I find myself wrestling with that a lot.
So I have a question for you. If you knock on wood, God forbid, he's not here with us tomorrow, would you be okay with the rest of your life knowing that you never got that answer?
It's a good question. That's deep.
Because you'd be going to the grave with that.
Yeah.
You'd be going to the grave with that.
For sure. I think, I think I've thought about that in like, maybe not death per se, but like if I just, maybe it has been death, but I just haven't called it that. Like if he just wasn't here and there was no way for me to like, communicate with him ever again. It's the same thing, right? Like if death was there, would I be okay with it? I think so. I think I would feel just the same way that I feel right now. Like there are questions that I would still exist, but I would be able to live with it. So I guess that's the thing that I'm like, so do I really need to then? I think that's the reason why I wrestle with it. Because I'm like, maybe if I were to get these answers, they would just give me more insight, right? As to like, who he was, but it still wouldn't change the fact that like he wasn't there, like that to me, and I don't know if it's that maybe is what it is, that I feel like it trumps, like him not being there trumps like everything. You get what I'm saying? Like, I get it. Like life is hard, right? Like, people go through rough things, right? Like, he wasn't born here in this country, so like, I don't know that experience, right? Like being like migrating to a new country and things like that. I don't know that what that is like, but I'm sure it's hard because my mom also wasn't born here and she came here and had to make a life for herself, So I think, knowing my mom's experience, I understand it's not easy, but I guess I don't know, I guess it's hard for me to just like grasp, like I grapple with like how, because I can't imagine, me personally, I can't imagine having a child and just not being there, like at all. Like to me, I'm always like, but there are reasons for it, right? There is a reason, I'm sure. There are things that he could say that would put it into perspective for me, but it still wouldn't change, I guess, maybe where I stand. I don't think that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, man. I think it's so. I don't know. I guess for me, the way I think about that is like, it's beautiful in a sense of like, we never know why sometimes or certain things happen in the
Yeah.
way that they happen.
Yes.
We don't ever understand that, we don't ever understand. And there's always the opposite side to it, right? What if he was present? What happens then?
Yeah.
Like, what's that butterfly effect? What happens if he is there? Or what happens, I guess, for my example, like what it would have been like if I never asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like that one thing that I think is so fascinating. If this never happens, how does this happen?
Right.
Right? Like maybe I'm not sure if this is a core motivation for you, but maybe since he wasn't there, maybe you want to help other people now and navigate that certain part of other people, and because you can understand what that's like.
For sure.
And it's like, if that never happened, would you still be doing what you want to do now? Would you be able to offer that hand or that assistance to somebody that doesn't have a father in their life?
Yeah.
Right? I'm a big believer in things are not happening to you, they're happening for you.
Mm-hmm.
That one small thing is happening for you now because you could be able to offer some help to people that don't understand or to people that grew up without that. And I just think it's so interesting that these little life experiences that we have, what the result of those are. Yeah. Because of that one little thing.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. And I said something similar when I was on that podcast too, is that like, my mom, even as a single mom, like I wanted for nothing. Like I feel like, even sometimes I'm like, am I spoiled? Or was I spoiled as a child? Maybe I was, but who cares? Right? Like I have that kind of attitude where I'm just like, yeah. Like if I wanted something, my mom, she would, I never felt like I was missing out on anything. But I do think, I did say that too, that like, if he was in the picture, maybe like, the relationship wasn't the healthiest and things like that, that could have more detrimental effects, right? Like we don't know, because I do know of circumstances where, there's two parents present and, the child is struggling, right? Because of whatever's going on in the home. So I think absolutely, that's where I am able to always like see the silver lining in things. And that's why I'm able to go forward. And I don't feel like, necessarily resentful or like, like I'm, in distress or anything like that, because I feel like everything does happen for a reason. I am a big believer in God. So I'm like, God be knowing what he doing. Like even when it's like, I don't get this, I don't understand why, like God has a plan with it and will make it work out for my good no matter what. So I think, I always, am pretty grounded and like rooted in like just like positive truths rather than like sinking into like, but I think whenever like it comes up around like family or parents, I'm always like, yeah, man, there are some questions that like, it would be cool to be able to ask, but I don't know that he even has the capacity to respond.
And sometimes I don't know if we're like the answer that we'd get.
Exactly. That might just send me into a spin.
But is it but then I guess also maybe like this is just existential thinking.
Yeah.
Is it not the answer that we want? or is it the answer that maybe sometimes we need?
Yeah.
You know,
That's
like,
good.
is it? Yeah, we might not get the answer that we want, or we preconditioned, or we determined ourselves, but maybe it's the answer that sets us free from everything.
Yeah.
Like maybe it sets us free from, oh, okay, if he wasn't there, that would understand why. I would be able to understand it. Even though I'm not able to maybe accept it
Yep.
or understand it fully, that would make sense why he would not be there. 2 + 2 would not equal 4 in this circumstance.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe even if it's not the answer that you want, maybe it's the answer that you need to set you free
For
from
sure.
wondering this one question: why was this person not there?
For sure.
Because it's going to set you free. You have there's no shackles holding you down now. You got the answer, so you can set yourself free.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's what you do with that answer, what you've been given to this whole question.
Right.
Now you have the answer. Now you're able to, all right, I got the key. Boom.
Yep.
Now I could just let go.
Yes. Interesting. I love it. I love like existential, like anything around
Yeah.
like existential like concepts or even like philosophical ones. Cause I do think like the questions that you ask and the things that you say are very like deep. Like the depth is like, ooh, I gotta ponder on this for a minute. What? What you just asked me? But yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate you. Thank you for it. It's very hard for me to, I guess the way I think, it's like that's also been a struggle in like personal relationships because of the depth of thinking. It's not that certain people don't want to meet me there, but I've wanted to change it for so long. So I appreciate that you've been able to kind of give me that space to go deeper and to kind of think out loud. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, for sure. It's a good quality. Like anybody who maybe like knocks you for it or has a hard time with it, they probably haven't met themselves there, right? Like they haven't been able to go that deep just yet. And me, I always like, I mean, I don't run from like, you know, like the hard conversations, the deeper ones. I mean, maybe that's because like of the work that I do. Like I have no choice because if I ask my clients a lot of things that they don't be ready for, but like they got to ponder on because you've been repeating the same cycle for 10 years. So what do we need to do differently? And they don't even know. They don't know. And sometimes they get frustrated with me because I stay on that same question topic until we figure out an answer. And so I get that. I think like just from like a professional standpoint and sometimes even personal, right? Like I'm very much so as far as like I'm an emotional person. Like I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve, but I am like someone who I deal with my emotions when I'm home, like after the day is done, and I will be in my bed in my thoughts about just like how did this week go? And then I can go through like very like just different levels of like deep emotions. And then I'm done. But I think like some people are just like just go into your bed and sleep, right? Like why do you need to, you know, but it's like my brain that's how my brain works. Like I have to deal with emotions, you know, like in like when they come up, when they're there, I have to like hold them. I have to, you know, assess them, like figure out like, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? What does this mean? Until I feel resolved, right? Like I think that's just, and that could be too because like I feel like taking in a lot of emotions a lot, and then I have my own that sometimes get neglected. That like when certain things come up for me, I feel like it can be even more intense because like I may not have even spent enough time dealing with certain things.
Yeah, I was laughing because I thought I was the only person that did that.
No.
That I'm the only person that does that. So it's very healing to know that that happens to you as well. And I never understood why. Like that's maybe the reason why I don't really sleep well all the time is because of that. Because I'm sitting there thinking about everything, about the day, about feelings, thoughts.
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be a pretty tough place to be at times. But I mean, I think that if that's how you operate, then that's how you operate. So it's very healing to know that you've also been doing that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. I think that's why it's important to talk about it, right? Because I think there are people like that's why when I talk about like even community, right? Like how the live show was about community is like you won't even know that like this person that you met last week goes through similar things that you do, right? Unless you talk to them, right? Like so I think like you can always find like, I like to call it maybe like your tribe or your community of people who like get it, right? And like for me, even when people don't get it, I'm like, okay, you don't get it, but like I know there are people who get it, right? Who experience similar things, but the depth I think is like it's a unicorn trait, right? I don't know that everybody is able to go that deep because they don't allow themselves to do so, right? I think it's sometimes a scary place to go because it's like, how deep are we gonna go, right? But I think it's a beautiful thing when you can do it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. How you know what? I'm like, how are we doing on time? Yeah, we're getting close to the end. But yeah, I mean before we end, I definitely want you to just share like about the podcast, right? Like where can people, find you, subscribe, listen, but also like, where do you want the podcast to go? Like what do you like as far as your vision for like this year? Short-term goals, long-term goals, like where do you see the podcast going or taking you?
So I guess I'll give the tags and stuff at the end, but do want to get to the answer to the question. I think in terms of the short-term goals, I think what's next for me is probably booking more consistent guests. I think that once I finish school, I'm able to hopefully book more guests, hopefully create episodes every week. That's ideally what I want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to do it full time, but obviously I'm in a very limited space
For sure.
with myself, creating it, doing all the other great things that need to be done for the podcast, the editing and all that outreach. So,
and you do everything yourself?
Yeah, everything's done myself. So, I mean, I don't.
Good stuff.
When people say self-made, I would tell them, listen, get yourself a damn team. Get yourself a damn team. That's why I brought two gentlemen behind the cameras. They're doing great.
They are. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, shout out to you guys, man. You guys are doing great. But I would say short-term goals is just creating episodes every week. Having really good conversations, man. That's kind of really where I want to take the podcast. Is just I thought about, okay, the 1% podcast. We drop episodes every week, almost every week, to help other people become 1% better. But I think what I really want to do also in that is help the guests become 1% better. Kind of a little bit of what I've alluded to. Maybe those are certain thoughts or certain ideas or certain feelings or emotions that they had that they didn't know was there.
Yeah.
And now maybe they're growing 1% better in their life. But just really creating meaningful, genuine conversations and having the guests, and not only the guests, but the people listening, to apply what is being given to their own life. Like what could they get? What is the one thing that they could probably get out the episode that they could be able to be, okay, now I'm going to apply what they've given me.
Absolutely.
So the long term is I want to do it full time.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do it full time. I want to be able, to have sponsors. I want to be able to do, that's what my living is, to interview people, because I enjoy using my curiosity and the way that I can be able to think in terms of asking other people meaningful questions. So hopefully I could become, one of the best podcasters out there. So that's really my long-term goal. That's something that I truly believe in. And I feel like with the consistent work, I'll be able to get there, but it's just a grind within the short term. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And you'll get there.
Thank
You'll
you.
get there. Like, I'm big on like speaking as if it's like happening or going to happen rather than like if or, maybes. I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen. Because, I think something about that is like, brings it into your life. Like that's, I guess, the manifesting like idea. But I completely see that in like for you, right? In your future. You're great. You're already like super great now. It's just getting the eyes, more eyes, and and with podcasting too, I always say like it's a long game, man. Like people do sometimes, like there are those rare moments where it's like maybe the person gets like the right look or somebody sees it or they have like a particular guest and it like takes off. But I feel like those type of experiences are rare with podcasting. I think the long game though, I always say builds character. Like I feel like for me it's been a long journey as well. But I love it. Like, I do it because I'm passionate about what I'm talking about. And I think as long as, you know, that's underneath the surface, like, it'll just be a great trajectory forward.
Yeah, short term. I think even in that as well is when you get the short term success, I often feel like it grows the ego and it doesn't grow the character.
That part.
Because the long term, right, the marathon as we call it, is where you truly understand yourself, where
Yeah.
you understand what you've been putting into it. And I'd much rather be 5 years, 10 years into it and then get that than a year, 2 years into it. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to grow my ego. Oh, I got it within this amount of time.
Right.
But if it's 5, 10 years, oh, there's character built here. There's thick skin. There's a certain level of understanding within yourself. Like, this is what I built and this is where it's going.
Absolutely.
So I much rather have the 5, 10-year trajectory, 20-year trajectory. And when you look at some of the top podcasters now, like a couple of my favorites, you know, it took them 500 episodes, 1,000 episodes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't even think people realize that.
No.
People don't realize that. And that's why I'm like, podcasting looks really cool.
Yeah.
But all of the things behind the scenes, people will miss. And that's why I'm like, you know, I always say, if you want to start a podcast, do it.
Yeah.
Right? Do it. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's oversaturated and stuff like that. I'm always like, if you want to try it, go ahead and try it. But just stick with it and make sure you love it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think we're still too early in podcasting. I was just, having a conversation. I think it's still too early. I think that people are going to create them, and there's been a lot of people that have been creating them, but I see in a couple of years, people are not going to create as often. Once they see how hard the work is, and they're going to fall off, and a lot of people that, are still truly committed and passionate about it, they're going to stay.
They'll still be here.
Yeah, they still will be here.
For sure.
But I guess, I do wanted to get to the...
Yeah.
So at the 1% Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, TheOne% PERCENT podcast. You can find it on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And if you guys want to follow me on the personal, it's Avi Wiswer, AVIWIZWER.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Avi. Thank you for everything you shared, all of the questions. You were interviewing me at one point.
Yeah, I mean, we gonna get to my interview, man. We gonna get to... I'm gonna have you on, and we gonna get into it.
Whenever you're ready.
For sure.
Pull up, and it'll be a time. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
No, thank you so much. This was great. And make sure you guys follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff. For all of you guys who have been supporting Your Mental Matters all this time. Or if you're new, thank you. I appreciate you. And we are out.
Cut.